Hello, everyone. It's probably time to begin. My name is Russell Weiland. I am the Deputy Director of the Division of Research Programs at the National Endowment for the Humanities. Welcome to today's event. I am joined today by my colleague Christopher Chateau and Peter Scott of the NEH Office of Grant Management, and Ellen Jones with our Office of Congressional Affairs. Before we begin, I offer a few reminders. First, if you want to use the closed captioning feature, you can do so by clicking on the icon in the lower right of your screen. Second, we will leave ample time for questions and answers after our presentation. You can send us your questions using the Q&A box at any time during today's presentation. Finally, this presentation is being recorded. If you can't get enough of us during the next half hour, you can certainly binge watch this presentation and others by NEH in the future. The recording of this presentation will be posted next week. This is the 11th of 12 workshops offered by NEH this spring. Chris, Peter, and I are using the next 30 to 40 minutes to discuss issues that are important to sponsored research and research development professionals at institutions of higher education. While our previous workshops have targeted those who seek to be project directors on NEH grants one day, we know that these future applicants often rely on their institution's grant professionals. In other words, you. You remind people at your institutions when deadlines are approaching. You hold internal workshops and sessions to encourage applications. You help applicants prepare their proposals and budgets, and you are often the authorized organizational representatives, or AORs, for your institutions. When your applicants are successful, you often serve as the IGAs to make sure the grant is managed properly. You toil away behind the scenes, so today's session is both our attempt to answer your questions and acknowledge the important work that you do. Let's begin by a quick definition of the humanities. In 1965, the US Congress leapt into an intellectual debate that had waged for 2,000 years. They tried to define the humanities. You can see what they came up with was a list of disciplines that looked very much like college and university departments: literature, history, philosophy, religious studies, languages, etc. People are often surprised that their definition also includes the social sciences. So if you have faculty in political science, anthropology, sociology, or psychology, you should encourage them to investigate NEH as a possible source of funding as well. What I like about this definition, however, is the second half. It captures some of the inherent sponginess in the humanities. For centuries, the humanities has interacted and combined with other disciplines like medicine, biology, environmental studies, engineering, and the like, or what we call today STEM. This definition, with both its naming of disciplines and its gesture towards interdisciplinary research, captures the breadth of the humanities as practiced at NEH. If you have faculty members who are doing interdisciplinary work, they are fully welcome and encouraged at NEH. Of course, the capaciousness of the definition of the humanities does not mean that everything is eligible. In fact, Congress has made some things explicitly not eligible for support. You might have faculty members who are using their humanities work to promote political or ideological points of view, advocate for political action, or lobby for public policy. Such projects even if in the humanities, are not eligible for support. Likewise, we draw a clear distinction between the creation and performance of art on the one hand and the humanities, the study of art on the other. NEH is the largest public grantor in the humanities. Its work is supported by taxpayer money and, as such, is responsible to both taxpayers and Congress. In fiscal year 2021, Congress allocated just over $160 million for NEH. This year, we also received $135 million in American Rescue Plan funds to support organizations hurt by the COVID-19 pandemic. All of our decisions are based on peer review. That is, we recruit people from around the country to evaluate proposals for us and tell us what the humanities needs. Because we have 100% turnover in our panelists from year to year, and because we strive to make our peer reviewers as diverse as our applicants, we are constantly looking for humanities professionals willing to serve as panelists. It is important for you to know that we post our notice of funding opportunities, sometimes called NOFOs, and sometimes called application guidelines, on our website 12 weeks prior to our deadlines. When we do, we also include specific information such as recent success rates in that program, how much money we plan to award in that program, and links to lists of recent awardees. NEH currently has 42 distinct grant lines, and I'm happy to say that college and universities and their faculty members are eligible and indeed competitive in almost all of them. Because there are so many, however, I won't single out any particular program in today's presentation. Here is an overview, however. We start with the Office of Challenge Grants. The Office of Challenge Grants endeavors to strengthen humanities institutions through matching funds used for infrastructure projects. Applicants might propose bricks and mortar projects, such as improving a library building, or projects that involve other types of infrastructure, such as improvement of technology. Because matching funds are involved, you will need to be prepared to do fundraising from outside sources. The Office of Digital Humanities nurtures new ways of doing and disseminating scholarship. While all of our programs welcome projects that have digital components, the important element to these grants is are their ends. If you have a team of scholars with a project that will result in new software or a new digital tool that other projects might be able to adapt to other uses, chances are your team should be looking for opportunities in our Office of Digital Humanities. If the technology is a means to a more traditional end, say, constructing a database to allow us to better understand the writings of Charles Dickens, then you probably want to look at one of our other grant opportunities in a different division or office. Key ideas for the Office of Digital Humanities are ideas such as innovation, sustainability, and interoperability. Through the Division of Education Programs, NEH seeks to strengthen teaching and learning in classrooms around the country. We do this in two ways. First, we offer programs that focus on the professional development of teachers through institutes that bring teachers together around a common topic. Second, the Division of Education supports curriculum and program development efforts through Humanities Connections grants and Humanities Initiatives grants. Through the Office of Federal State Partnership, NEH supports state and local humanities engagement at the grassroots. Please encourage your faculty members to reach out to the state council where you live. Most state councils need scholars for speakers, bureaus, and consultants. It is a way to bring the humanities to your local community. As the name suggests, the Division of Preservation and Access seeks to preserve and provide access to cultural and educational resources. Its programs target libraries and archives and often hold important cultural materials. Its program also encourages scholars who are developing research tools such as databases and atlases, which make important materials available to other scholars, students, and library users. If you are interested in supporting the libraries and archives on your campus, please look into the diverse opportunities available in the Division of Preservation and Access. Public Programs is often known for its support of large documentary films like the Civil War or Ken Burns' Baseball. But there is so much more. The Division of Public Programs provides opportunities for lifelong learning through documentary films of all sizes, library and museum exhibitions and programs, and multimedia programs that help the general public better understand the humanities. Like many of our offerings, programs in the Division of Public Programs support projects that at both the planning and the implementation stages. Projects are team-based, and scholars and researchers are often central to those team efforts. Finally, the Division of Research Programs. This division facilitates research and original scholarship that reach other other scholars, general readers, or both. Many of you are very familiar with our fellowships and summer stipends programs, which are some of the oldest at the endowment, and they are some of the only programs at the endowment that support individuals directly. Just as important, however, are the institutional research grants that support collaboration, such as workshops, conferences, and other types of convenings, international collaborations, team-based manuscript preparation, editions, translations, and archaeological and ethnographic field research. I want to conclude my part of the presentation by talking about 8 things that I think you can do to help your faculty to succeed at NEH. First, know the resources available to you at NEH. Most of the 160 employees at NEH are hired to help you access grant money. That's our job. You should never hesitate to call or email us with questions. Again, we are eager and available to help. For many of our programs, we read draft applications. This sets us apart from many of our other government counterparts. This will be an incentive, we hope, to encourage applicants on your campus to start their proposals early, which I know is something that you will appreciate as well. We provide successful applications for all of our grant lines. These are samples, not models, and you should encourage your faculty members to use the samples to help their thinking, in their thinking as they put together their own applications. For every deadline, we hold a webinar to go over tips for submitting competitive applications to that deadline and review what might be new from previous competitions. These webinars, if you miss them, are available as recordings. We use our blog to highlight the work of our grantees. And most importantly, we provide all applicants, successful and unsuccessful, with reviewer comments. If you are involved in the creation of a proposal, make sure you ask your faculty members to share their evaluation comments with you. Second, get your junior scholars involved early in applying for grants. In other words, create a culture of application on your campus. We strongly suggest that you use experienced members of your faculty to help talk about developing grantsmanship. Third, if your institution does not regularly apply for grants, begin with an honest assessment of your institutional strengths. It is always best to apply from a position of strength. Do you have a particularly strong humanities program, a well-regarded medical school, deep roots in the community? Each institution will have distinct strengths, and these will help you focus on where you should start at NEH. Fourth, when you succeed, and you will succeed, remember to promote your success. Faculty members are often like sheep. Where one goes, another is likely to follow. By promoting good work and successes, other scholars on your campus will redouble their efforts in order to follow. Fifth, familiarize yourself with the evaluation criteria for the program you're interested in. Our evaluation criteria can be summarized in the following way: the importance of the project, the quality of the proposal and the work plan, the appropriateness of the people involved, and the eventual payoff. The language might differ from competition to competition, but some element of these 5 Ps are in every evaluation criteria. Sixth, don't forget that the NEH is taxpayer supported. As such, the work plan and the payoff are particularly important. Seventh, remind your faculty members that applications might be made up of many documents and forms, but all of these parts must work together. Narratives should be referring to resumes. Budgets must make sense in the context of narratives. When this happens, the application will become bigger than just the sum of its parts. Finally, encourage your faculty members to become peer reviewers. There is no better way to learn to write a competitive application than to read a bunch. They can sign up on our website, or they can contact someone in our office or division to express interest. Do we require previous NEH experience? Absolutely not. Do we want junior scholars and adjuncts too? Absolutely. Do we include panelists at non-research institutions or those who occupy non-teaching positions? Yes. So then at this point, I want to thank you and turn things over to Chris and to Peter.
Thank you very much, Russ. So as Russ kind of discussed a bit of the programmatic side of the various programs that NEH administers, I'm going to first begin with an overview of what we do in the Office of Grant Management, where we handle a bit more of the administrative side and covering the administrative requirements, questions about allowability, eligibility, indirect costs, and things like that. Given the scope of today's discussion, we're going to talk about this kind of in the context of incoming applications or those who, maybe prospective applicants, although we know some of you may be working with existing or active NEH awards as well. So during the application phase, our office is able to assist with budget questions about the R&R budget form, or where certain types of costs are most appropriately placed in the budget. We can assist with questions about allowability, for specific programs, as well as how to apply indirect cost rates. Broadly, we ensure that the budgets are consistent with the cost principles in 2 CFR 200, which is the Uniform Administrative Requirements that regulate much of federal grant administration. We can also assist with the questions about administrative requirements as well, in terms of reporting and record keeping, things like that. Unfortunately, we can't assist with technical issues related to grants.gov. I'm aware that, unfortunately, particularly closer to the deadlines, sometimes the website can run into technical issues and things like that. Unfortunately, we don't work directly with the grants.gov system, so we're unable to assist with that part of the application process. Can we move to the next slide, please, Russ? So first I wanted to discuss a little bit about general eligibility, and from here we're going to then discuss indirect costs and some common questions off of the budget form. So as Russ mentioned, we do have quite a variety of programs. Some of those programs will have specific eligibility requirements about whether it's aimed primarily at institutions of higher education or nonprofits, etc. Overall, the rule of thumb really is that applicants are ineligible if they are foreign or for-profit entities. The same applies to subrecipients. So if any of your institutions are considering making a subaward as part of a prospective project, the rule of thumb would apply to those subrecipients as well. For questions about specific eligibility, if there is anything in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, aka the NOFO, that you'd like some clarification on, you can contact our office or NEH about that, and we can work with the program division to clarify any questions you may have about eligibility. I believe next we're going to discuss indirect cost rates, I think, and for that I'm going to pass it, the research and related budget form. And for this, I'll pass it over to my colleague, Peter.
Hello, this is Peter. As both Russ and Chris have mentioned, the research and related budget form is the required budget form for NEH grants. And it is part of the grants.gov application package, which you will find when you look at the NOFO on the NEH website. That is the guidelines for the program that you're thinking of applying to. It will take you to the research and related budget form will be part of it, and you can look at it. Many of you are probably quite familiar with it, but you can look at it ahead of time and see the different parts of it, and it includes it has spaces for all of the expenses of the project, including salary and fringe benefits and things such as travel and supplies. And then it has different fields where you enter expenses that are related to employees of your organization, and different ones for those who are not employees. They might be working as consultants or perhaps through subawards. In any case, as you look carefully at the Notice of Funding Opportunity for the NEH program that you're applying to, you'll see that the section in there on the budget, I'm putting together the budget, has sections that correspond to each part of the R&R budget. So that will instruct you pretty well on where in the budget form you list your various costs. Then also part of the R&R budget form, with the R&R budget form, you include a detailed justification for the budget. And this will include detailed information on how you calculate the various costs, such as salaries, travel costs, and subaward costs. And also it would include things like when you have if you have a cost sharing, which is not required in most of our programs, but you are including it, you would include information on that in the justification. We in the Office of Grant Management are always available to answer questions about how you list things in the R&R budget form, and don't hesitate to contact us. Now, if we can move to the next slide, we're going to talk a bit about indirect costs. Indirect costs are a topic in the budget, which often are the subject of questions from applicants and awardees. As you know, indirect costs they can be thought of as overhead costs. They are, or sometimes the term facilities and administrative costs is used, and they are the overhead costs of running the organization, and they are not directly related. They are not direct costs of the project that you are applying for funding for. And in any case, the indirect costs indirect cost rate that you use is in the negotiated indirect cost rate agreement that you negotiate with the federal government, if you have negotiated one. And some important things about indirect costs: the indirect cost rate that you have negotiated has to be applicable to the period of performance. That is, it has to the agreement that you have and the rate that you have negotiated has to still be valid and active during the period that you will be performing the project. And a lot of organizations, especially universities, negotiate a number of different types of indirect cost rates. They can have rates that are research rates or instruction rates or other sponsored activity rates, and some have rates that are applicable to all programs. And one thing we want to highlight is that even though NEH funds research in the humanities, the research rate that you negotiate with the federal government cannot be used on NEH projects because they are for scientific research, not humanities research of the type that NEH funds. And then another possibility, if you don't have a negotiated indirect cost rate that's applicable to the type of activity you're doing, or you've never had one, you could use what we call the 10% de minimis rate. And all of these rates are applied to an indirect cost base, and that is the amount of the costs that you can apply the rate to. And for many of these, the base is called modified total direct costs. Sometimes they are salaries and wages, but your negotiated indirect cost rate agreement will tell you what kind of base this rate is applied to. And the base, excluded from the base, usually are certain things such as participant support costs and part of the costs of subawards. Participant support costs have to do with people who are participating in a conference, an institute, a seminar, some sort of group training activity that you are applying for funding for. And so they would be things that support the participants in this, like stipends, books, refreshments, travel costs, lodging, and so on. They would be excluded from the indirect cost base. If you're using the de minimis rate, the 2 CFR 200 defines the base for that. Well, that's a lot of technical information, but we are always here to try to answer questions about that. And if you have questions already, don't hesitate to enter them in the in the question and answer fields, and we will try to do that. So I think that's it for the Office of Grant Management portion. Unless, Chris, you have anything to add?
No, that covered everything, Peter.
All right, if anyone has any questions, you can insert them in the Q&A field, and I will pass them along to our presenters. Our first question is, can a link be embedded in a proposal?
This is Russ, and thanks for the question. Absolutely, you can embed a link, and in fact, there are many times when it will be appropriate to do so. And so the simple answer is yes, absolutely.
Our next question is, if our university's indirect cost rate is the same for research as for instruction, is it expected that we include that full rate, or is NEH looking for a reduced or waived indirect rate?
This is go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, if you have a rate that's applicable to the activity, so if an instructional rate was appropriate for the activity that was being funded, then the corresponding rate could be used in the budget.
Our next question is, some of the NEH Notice of Funding opportunities, or NOFOs, require that each budget line is rounded to the nearest dollar. This requires us to manually, complete the budget forms, even that we are using a system-to-system application, thus creating double work for our administrators. Is NEH considering doing away with the rounding requirement?
Mark, I think you've Mark. Someone named Mark has asked that question. This is Russ, and I have to say, in sort of 30 years of doing this, and actually being the person at when I was at grants.gov to implement the system-to-system effort there 10, 15 years ago, I don't ever recall anyone ever asking that or making us even aware that this was a problem. It's something we will certainly pass on, and we'll see what we can do for you. Right now, I don't think there is a plan, but I think that's not because I think that's because we simply didn't know that that was an issue. So I'll make sure that our computer office, which is really dynamite, knows of this concern. Thanks.
Thank you, Russ. We have another question about indirect cost rates. Their university has a negotiated indirect cost rate of 79% on university salaries only. When we charge indirect costs on salaries, we do not charge fringe benefits. We do not have two rates. I guess this isn't a question so much as it's a statement. They don't have a separate rate for science research and humanities research.
The research rate overall refers to scientific or laboratory research rather than scholarly research, such as the type that NEH would typically fund. So an organized research rate or a research rate, generally speaking, would not be applicable to an NEH project budget.
But you can use you can use a rate that has a base of salaries. That's fine.
Yes, whatever indirect cost base is specified in the negotiated indirect cost rate agreement.
And so even if it seems like it says research and you think it applies, it doesn't have to clarify that it's STEM or non-STEM. The research rate does not apply to NEH pretty much ever.
That's correct. Yeah, I think what we say in the NOFO is that except in extremely rare circumstances, it wouldn't be applicable.
Okay. Here's a question for Russ. Do you anticipate any increase in summer stipend awards in upcoming budget years?
Great question. And we are certainly very, very hopeful that this will happen soon. We realize that At this point, a $6,000 award for a summer stipend is more an acknowledgement than as a financial help. As you know, most of you probably know that NEH is between chairmen right now. And when the Biden administration appoints a new chairman to NEH, certainly this will be on the top of the research request list. But as of right now, there isn't a plan except that we are hoping to move it up. You probably remember that a couple of years ago, we moved the stipend, the monthly stipend in the fellowships program to $5,000 a month to more accurately sort of keep step with other major grantors. And we are looking to do the same in summer stipends.
Thank you. We have another follow-up question about indirect rates. I think, it's probably something that's kind of getting into the nitty-gritty a bit. And I think unless Chris or Peter have thoughts, it might be best handled with specifics over email after this workshop.
Yeah, we'd be happy to follow up over email, I think.
One of the great, Ellen, one of the great things about this audience, sponsored research and research development professionals, and I've spoken to them at NCURA and NORDUP and CLASP and all of the other organizations that where they often congregate, is that they ask remarkably pointed questions and well-informed questions. So don't let pointed and well-informed questions scare you away.
Well, as we don't have anything else in the queue, I guess I can just ask this now. Can you please repeat the response to the question about using the full NICRA for NEH grants if your NICRA does not distinguish between research and non-research grants? We only have one rate that doesn't refer to research.
What is the type of activity that does the rate correspond to? Is it instruction, other sponsored activity, all programs, research?
If it's an all programs rate, they could use that.
Yeah, it just needs to correspond to the type of activity that's being funded. So when you're looking at the negotiated indirect cost rate agreement, I believe it's on the far right of your negotiated rate. It will say the type of activity that rate corresponds to.
Okay. Is there a definition available for scientific research versus scholarly inquiry?
I think we'd have to follow up over email with that.
And yeah, there is one in 2 CFR 200. The Division of Research was horrified when we learned that that when 2 CFR 200 talked about research, and we consider humanities scholars as doing real research, that we didn't qualify for what they considered real research. We were horrified, but I do remember that in 2 CFR 200 there is a definition of research. So that's yeah.
I will say that our staff across the board are really great at responding to emails. If you have specifics about your program, please reach out to our Office of Grants Management at grantmanagement@neh.gov. We have another question, which is there a communication piece that has been created to invite faculty to be a reviewer? What is the best way to promote the peer review opportunity to our faculty?
Well, promoting it to your faculty, and that'll vary from institution to institution. I should say that if I think you go to the About Us link on the NEH homepage, NEH.gov, you will find a link to someone who wants to become a panelist. The other way to do it too is simply to ask or to encourage the faculty member to send us a copy of their CV. We will enter them into EGMS, our grant management database. But it also sort of puts them on the screen right away so that we can recruit them sooner rather than later. I should say that we probably use, I don't know, about 500 or so panelists per year. And like I said in my initial comments, we have 100% turnover every year. And for us, it makes us different from most other granting agencies. Most use panelists for, from anywhere from 3 to 5 years. But it's important for us to have that turnover. We're very concerned about any kind of sort of what would be called an old boys network, or anything that would jeopardize an application year after year. And so that's why we work really hard to bring new people into the peer review process. So they can always send me if they're interested in being a panelist, and I'll make sure that gets to the right person. But there's also a place online.
Great. We did post the link to become a peer review panelist in the Q&A chat, so people can see that there. Our next question is, for an education program project, can you offer guidelines on the recommended scope of the project? A team at my university was told in a draft review that their proposed project for a Humanities initiative project was too small, yet the NOFO states that modest projects are welcome. Can you offer advice?
Thanks for that question. I respond with a little bit of hesitance simply because I don't deal with those grants on a day-to-day basis. And so it's probably, you're going to get your best answer by talking to one of my colleagues in the Division of Education Programs. And I would suggest maybe Deb Hurt as the person you would want to talk to. And she's DHURTT at NEH.gov. But let me say this. Yeah, I mean, usually we have the other problem. Sort of the flip side of the problem that you have is that we get projects where the scope is just way too large, and so what we want is a little bit more focus. One of the things that your draft might not be doing is articulating, how many people will be impacted by the award, what is the intellectual payoff for what you are trying to do. A lot of times, I see this in research applications all the time. People have what is actually a really great idea, but they don't frame it in a way that helps us see the larger significance. And so I would encourage you to start with your draft and ask yourself if you've really made the case for the impact that the programming is going to have on your campus, to your students, to faculty members, and then think about how do you articulate that larger importance in a more compelling way. It's very possible that your project is the right size and you simply haven't articulated that. And given that most of our projects have just the opposite problem, it's my gut feeling that it's a matter of failure to communicate your larger importance. But I would contact whoever gave you the response to your draft. You should absolutely have no qualms about picking up the phone or getting on email and asking them to explain that comment further.
I'm so sorry. I was muted and I had been talking.
Okay. I thought maybe I had dropped off and I had just provided a brilliant answer for no good for no one.
No, that was me. I said that I had responded with a email address for that particular program, hi@neh.gov, and you can shoot them an email to ask for specifics, and they're happy to help you. We always do encourage folks to reach out to our program officers, and if you're not sure which program or division to contact, you can always shoot me an email at congressional@neh.gov, and I can put you in touch with the appropriate person.
Ellen, one of the things that I think is another great resource for people, obviously our website has a lot of information and lots of different ways that you can get a hold of us. But the Humanities magazine is put online, and our Humanities magazine has a really great summary of deadlines that are coming up, as well as contact information for all of the programs. And so that would be another place to go.
It's a very good suggestion, Russ. So yeah, it looks like most of our remaining questions are about very specific cases. And for those, especially about different indirect rates, I would recommend folks reach out to grant management at NEH.gov, which you can see on the screen, or congressional@NEH.gov, and we will get you in touch with the appropriate person. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This recording will be available on NEH's website and YouTube page next week. The site on our webpage will also contain the other workshops that were a part of this series of virtual grant workshops, if you are interested in sharing those with members of your faculty.